German eugenics studies were organized and bankrolled by the family-run Rockefeller Foundation and its allies in medicine, industry, and politics, with large grants provided to the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute for Psychiatry and the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute for Anthropology, Eugenics, and Human Heredity in Munich. The latter facility was run by the fascist Swiss psychiatrist Ernst Rudin and his underlings Ottmar Verschuer and Franz J. Kallmann. In 1932, Ernst Rudin was named president of the Worldwide Eugenics Federation. Rockefeller funding for eugenics research in Germany would continue during World War II, the stated justification being that the war should not impede scientific research. That's from Jim Keith's great book, Mass Control, Engineering Human Consciousness, Ventures Unlimited Press book. Excellent book. Anything by Jim Keith is really good. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Stench of Truth. You know, I just wanted to talk about a couple of things. And I want to point out to you the disparity between what is important to people in a general sense in this country and what is going on that should be important to people in this country and is not. First of all, you have a big brouhaha because some so-called psychologist by the name of Dr. Laura Schlesinger, better known simply as Dr. Laura, talks about the so-called N-word on during a call with someone who talked about people using this term, and it turns into a giant fiasco, and all the talk shows talking about it. It's all over the news, all over the internet, etc. It's just come to be a big, huge issue. Okay, that's one thing. Another one is the idea of the the mosque in New York and its proximity to Ground Zero, and how Obama has come out, saying that they have a right to do this. In effect, as some people have said, giving his blessing for this. And the last thing with Jennifer Aniston, using the term retard. And I'm picking these out because they're specifically, things that people are talking about and stuff that I find all over the internet, as opposed to real, actual things that actually really matter. Okay, as far as Dr. Laura saying the N-word, am I failing to see something here? Why is this such an issue that it has to be, crushed and ground beneath the heels of people day in and day out? I understand that some terms can be offensive to people. But on the other hand, there is the idea of freedom of speech. And in my view, freedom of speech comes first. So, if you want to talk about it for about 30 seconds. And then decide that she has a right to say what she wants because we have freedom of speech in this country, and move on to another more important topic. Okay? As far as the mosque in New York goes, okay, a lot of people who are indignant and outraged by this, if they thought about this logically, perhaps they would come to a different conclusion. Because there are a lot of people in this country, and a lot of those people that are outraged about this idea of a mosque in New York, close proximity to Ground Zero, do not believe the official government's story about 9/11. That radical Islamic hijackers planned and executed that as a jihad against America from a nebulous terrorist organization named Al-Qaeda, run by the long-dead Osama bin Laden. So, if it wasn't an attack from Islam against the United States, then all of the people who believe that should have no problem with a mosque going there. And bottom line again, freedom of speech. Move on after 10 seconds of discussion. Freedom of religion. Are they doing anything? Are they harming anybody? Is Islam really our enemy? Should it be our enemy? Those are all valid discussions. But taking up so much time talking about issues of this nature, which should be readily resolved. We have freedom of religion in this country. Freedom of religion. It's an absolute right. The government doesn't give it. It merely affirms that it is something that we possess already. Now, as many people have pointed out, there is a certain amount of wisdom that one needs to use when deciding how to exercise one's right. So perhaps the Muslims in New York would be better served by choosing to exercise their religion elsewhere. But if they don't, it doesn't bother me at all. Not a bit. If they had a mosque right there on Ground Zero, it wouldn't bother me a bit. Because even if there were Arabs who happened to be Muslims on those planes, and or even flying those planes on 9/11, it certainly wasn't Islam that was driving that. Because if they had any connections to Al-Qaeda, they were run by CIA, and they certainly had connections to the federal government in this country, and probably to the Mossad and other intelligence agencies around the world. So, in my view, Islam is not our enemy. We only are attempting to make Islam our enemy. And I have to ask you, do we want 1 billion people as our enemy? We already got 1 billion people in China who are potentially our enemy. We want another 1 billion people our enemy too? Well, I guess the powers that be want that. And then this stirs up the whole idea of Obama being a Muslim. Again, what difference does it make if he's a Muslim or a Christian or whatever he happens to be? Okay? What difference does it make? What difference does it make? Judge him by his policies. Judge him by what he does. Judge him by his total lack of leadership. Judge him by his complete and utter destruction of this country. I don't think his faith enters into this at all. Not in any sense. Because if he was a Muslim, it'd have more care for the poor because they have a certain, a greater, idea of helping the poor in Islam than they do perhaps in Christianity as a portion of their religion. Not to say that Christians aren't, great givers, but that seems to be very much ingrained into the structure of that religion, more so than it is in Christianity. And then, of course, on the other hand, if he's a Christian, obviously he should have more compassion for the people that have been affected negatively by everything that's going on. And then, of course, the final Jennifer Aniston retard comment. How many times do you use the word retard? I use the word retard probably about 100 times. I grew up. I use it about 100 times a day sometimes, depending on the situation, depending on what kind of day I had. I'm not throwing a disparaging comment out against mentally handicapped people. I'm using slang terminology that I grew up with. It's what I use. It's the language I know. Can't just change that. There's no such thing as being politically correct. Whenever you have a vocabulary and language that, comes from your childhood and